All right, so that gives us 7 out of the 12. So I think we can get started, and if others jump in, the more the merrier. Welcome, all of you. I hope you had good, restful, family and friend-filled holidays. It's good to see you all again. Um, we did not meet in December because folks wanted time to digest the reports that Director Emmerich had sent us, and other things. So we will have two meetings in January. Our regularly scheduled fourth Tuesday, and of course this one, so that we can get started. Before I get too far along, I would like to give the opportunity for Commissioner Lisa Ambrose to introduce herself, and kind of introduce herself to the group and talk about what she hopes to accomplish real quick, and then we can kind of get into our agenda for today. So, Ms. Ambrose.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lisa Ambrose, and so I'm the CEO of Amani Community Services, where we do domestic violence and sexual assault services, assisting African Americans here in Iowa. So I heard a little bit about the meeting, so I thought I would sit in today to find out, how Amani could get involved and works, with some other agencies that as well that are on this phone call. So I'm just, in today to find out, is this something that could benefit Amani and his clients to be a part of?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we always welcome folks to come and take part in that conversation. So, I think what we'll talk about first, everyone received the agenda, correct, that I had sent out last week. It looks like this. It's lovely. Everyone can see that. Thumbs up. Yep. Okay. So we started meeting in September. We had several good meetings in the fall. Kind of getting our feet straight, all that kind of good stuff. I feel, as the chair and in conversations I've had with other folks, that it is time for us to start getting out into the community, because we will not solve the problem of violence in our community just through Zoom calls. So I wanted to talk with folks about planning a variety of community outreach. I know that we all have very busy schedules, so I completely understand that we may not all be able to get to every single one of these events, but part of the reason that we wanted to invite you all was, of course, your expertise, but also the diverse networks that we can bring so that we can have real meaningful conversations with folks who are impacted by this, and not just sort of surface level conversations. So I had a series of summer conversations last year in the community at the Jubilee Freedom Center with the community. Those were fairly decently attended with the folks that we have, but I think we need to look at other ways to do community outreach. So I want to kind of talk with this group about what we see in terms of community outreach for citizens, and then also we will talk later about talking with youth and parents and then other stakeholders, because we are not going to solve this just by ourselves either. So locations, dates, places, those types of things for citizen outreach. What do we think will work well? What do we think won't work well? So that we can make sure. I'm going to guess it's probably not going to be a one and done type of conversation. So I want to open that up to the group, and I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to mute myself, so I stop.
Well, what have you guys done so far? I know you said you met at Jubilee Church. Um, and was it with these people that are on this Zoom meeting right here, or was it other people through the community, like the chief of police and all those kind of people, or?
So that was before the commission fully got started. That was more of me doing some personal fact finding. Um, we did have a meeting where then Chief Fitzgerald was present, as well as some um, folks who work in mentoring and do some other work in the community, including Renell Walker and Neil Wilder and Michelle Feltus. Um, we also had conversations talking about larger community investments, um, as well as hearing folks' concerns about what they would like to see. But those were very preliminary conversations, and they were before this group existed. It was more for me as a city council member to get an understanding um, on where folks were, what they were thinking, and what their needs were for the community. But it was not as formalized as this commission, if that makes sense.
I was thinking, Jonathan, as you were kind of talking about how to do, community outreach to talk with people, not to get it too confused, because I know we have different constituency groups that we want to make sure that we connect with. We don't, a lot of times you connect with the people that are most passionate and loud about it. We got to make sure that we also connect with all the others as well. But I know oftentimes some of the best outreach can be done when connected with other institutions. So for example, the school district, is there a way that we could, most people either have children in school, have had children in school, have nieces and nephews that they've gone to programs at school. So thinking about locations and sort of ways of breaking up, those kind of outreach meetings or stuff. I'm wondering about using schools or the high schools maybe as both meeting places and opportunities to connect with those, those who would definitely have something to say and to teach us about, what's going on right now.
Okay, so hosting them in perhaps the high school
Yeah.
cafeterias as a meeting space. Okay, potentially.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go.
I would say it just takes care of so many other issues that would come up with trying to find space. Plus, most people can find their way to east or find their way to west or whatever, and be sort of centralized and all of that kind. So just to me, that was an immediate thought that jumped out about for that.
Yeah.
And to add to that, are there particular events that are happening in the school system and schools that could be piggyback on in terms of prior to or after whatever the event is, if there's groups that are coming to the school already?
Okay. Okay, so we can reach out to them and see what they think on utilizing those spaces for that. I also agree, Gwen, that we want to make sure that we make it as open and as accessible as possible. So how do we get the word out? I know in the summer I put things on social media and I sent press releases to the Courier and KWWO and KCRG, but I also know that not everyone gets in or uses those. So I think as we start to think about time frame for these, we want to make sure that we have time. One critique that I got, which I think is a really good one, is to put flyers in places where people are going at, or sending them potentially to churches. I've had some pastors reach out that they might be interested in having us come and talk during an education hour. So we would want to have something designed that we could easily hand out or give to places or institutions where there is common meeting places where folks could gather that information that's not just online. Other suggestions, comments?
I guess I would say that, we do a fair amount of outreach, and we've had the best luck not hosting our own thing, but piggybacking onto something else.
Okay.
We do outreach to the Department of Corrections where you can get a captive audience, so to speak, where, they're there and you can deal with it. We went to East and West High are both really good about letting us get in front of athletic teams and have an outreach that way. Just kind of, we're not calling people to us, we're going to them. And that's always been more successful. I mean, we've had these big, we had a community picnic and, like 15 people show up and there's more of us there than there are people. So we have much better luck, for us anyway, from the police department side, of finding someone who's hosting a meeting, offering to do outreach to that meeting. And people are very gracious and welcoming us in and saying, yeah, sure, come on in here and talk to us about youth violence or community violence or that kind of thing. So going to a group that already exists or already meets, to me, is always more successful than trying to create a new group. You said it, everybody's busy and people are bouncing from thing to thing to thing. So if you just take a piece of their meeting, even if it's 15, 20 minutes, I think that's a good way to get the message out into the community, into some of these leader groups.
So maybe looking at like booster clubs or PTAs if they have them. I'm also thinking neighborhood associations have regular meetings, so that might be another group that we do 10-minute thing at.
Well, the East Side Ministers might be another good group to reach out to, the Pastoral Alliance, groups like that are very welcoming.
Okay.
Councilperson Ryder, I was gonna say, like, because I'm the Maywood Neighborhood Association, most of our neighborhood associations have Facebook pages where the people showing up to meetings is limited, but the people checking our Facebook pages is high. So even putting that information out on those Facebook pages. And there are summer programming events like Beat the Streets and other things that are being done, that maybe there would be an opportunity for presentations or things to be done at.
Yeah. And I know Renell was not able to make it, but that's definitely a conversation for us to have. And yes, I know a lot of neighborhood associations use Facebook. So if we had a one-pager for folks to reach out to us or to communicate their ideas, that might also be, because let's say we do something on a Thursday night, who knows what folks' schedule will be, but if we have something on their Facebook groups and that regularly gets sort of cycled back up, that could also be a good way for us to get information as well.
We could also on the Facebook pages put a link to a survey where there's some open-ended questions to gather input, pros and cons to that, but that could be another forum if people are going to the Facebook to provide some feedback that is more anonymous than posting on Facebook.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, I work with high schoolers all day. I know the joys and the tribulations of an anonymous Google form, but I definitely think that we as a group can weed through that, and certainly know that if something looks fishy, it is. But I do agree that a anonymous Google form where for even the questions of like, what do you think would help, could give us some very necessary feedback for sure. And it helps people be accessible.
And I have a couple different platforms that I could use to set that up if you wanted to, or if there's not other platforms available.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else to kind of brainstorm before we sort of start assigning things out?
I guess I just want to be sure that we are very thoughtful in making sure that, and I know we have been, I'm just need to feel the need to put it out there, that we make sure that we have, certainly maximize the potential for the social media work. And what Teresa said is very true. There's so many of those different Facebook pages already that tap into important constituent groups that we need to focus on, but also really dig in and try to find ways to reach people who aren't Facebook active.
Yeah,
Thinking about people that are older, who don't use technology, people that don't necessarily have stable residence, so don't have access to technology. Just making sure that we're thoughtful, sort of those two lines, because we want to maximize social media because that's a great cheap way to get it out there, but we
Right.
got to make sure we think of those other strategies as well.
Yep, absolutely.
yeah, I certainly think that we're going to have both an online and in-person presence, and maybe that is making a survey and then printing out copies of that survey and dropping it off at churches or places where people, regulars who sort of go in and out, social services and places where folks go in and out as well, and then having them just return it and someone can collect it as well.
Yeah.
But also, yes, having things. So, all right. Does anyone feel compelled, particularly crafty, in putting together a one-page document kind of explaining what this group is and providing contact information? If we're comfortable, I'm perfectly fine just putting my city phone number and email, and then I can always forward stuff onto the group. But does anyone feel particularly compelled to make a nifty one-pager that we could print out and share online?
I could tackle that. We
Okay.
have some good GA graduate assistants that we have one that loves doing stuff like that. So
Okay. Would you also be willing to tackle the survey?
yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Speak to the survey for a minute because it's a great idea and I'm a huge survey fan. There's a lot of them out there. I mean,
Yeah.
we wouldn't probably have to reinvent or create our own, but we could probably borrow some pieces. If you Google it, there is a lot of survey information out there, and I'm a big survey person. I love them. The department got its first one in January, and I've got the next one ready to go in February. So I'm going to wear my welcome out with them, I think, eventually. But there is a lot of useful information, and I think we could really dial down the focus of the group using those.
Yep. I agree, Joe. And I will, don't want to reinvent the wheel, but build upon what's out there, and which actually brings to another point. The data that's available in the community. Have we had done a good assessment of what the data is already available out there in terms of other data sources? From the schools or from United Way, or what other data is available within the community that may augment what you have available, Joe, or
Yeah, I would guess the schools have some data. We obviously have some. The hospitals probably too, but I don't know how much you get out of them because of HIPAA, maybe some generic statistical stuff. But I think we could certainly come up with some stuff for the pamphlet or the flyer to what violence looks like and what youth violence specifically looks like. But I think we certainly get enough data to put something together for that.
Yeah. The other thing that we could, Success Link, Brad's shop has a wealth of resources and information that could help us identify some of the risk factors that we already know, or is that available in the technical package that was shared out, that also can inform some of our work moving forward.
So speaking of giving tasks to folks, is there someone who would like to sort of reach out to folks and collect that data, so that we have it, so we can utilize it to inform our decisions, along with the data that we collect through the surveys and others?
I have a meeting scheduled with Brad for Thursday already, so I can touch base with him on what he believes he could pull together to inform us.
Okay,
And I can do some mind work on ours
okay,
and pull out different things and get them back to the group, see what specifically they're looking for. You know, we can make that thing search for a lot of different stuff, but crime victimization is a huge thing for me right now, and the demographics of victimization is interesting. The age of crime victims, the age of our offenders, that kind of thing is all stuff that we should be able to gather out of our system.
okay. And I will talk to Sharice, because she does work at the district level, and see what data there might be there as well. Michelle, you can't hear us? Okay, so give me 1 second. Okay, so summer events, and neighborhood associations. Does someone feel particularly compelled to reach out to groups or connected with groups that are doing summer events, or could reach out to our new neighborhood services provider with the city to get us started to get connected with those groups as well?
I can do that.
Okay. And then let us know when those events are. Does anyone have any connection with EMA or other other churches, particularly on the east side, but sort of around the community, that might also be interested in hearing from us, or would be willing to reach out to those folks?
I do have a contact at EMA that I've spoke to on many occasions, so I can cover the EMA, and that covers a fair amount of those churches. And then
Okay,
Abraham Pastor Punches is on the commission, so he probably has more reach than I do, and I can work with him to kind of work through that.
perfect. I will work with Sharice on seeing about utilizing the schools and those spaces for community meetings. I'm guessing timeline wise, we're probably not going to have anything until one of those bigger ones until February, which doesn't mean we can't have these smaller ones beforehand. But I will work on utilizing the school districts, certainly the high schools, and I think even reaching out to middle schools as well will be helpful. I did speak with my principal, and he would be okay, and he thinks that the East Side principal would be okay if we wanted to send out information to students. So that could be a survey, though it might be better to invite the youth to a specific meeting. I know that Miss Latanya did say that would be really important, and I agree with her last time that we met, that hearing from the youth as well is going to be a big one. So I think we want to think about where we can meet the youth, because that's definitely a group where we're going to need to meet them at wherever they're at, given their mobility and those types of things as well. So do folks have any ideas about, certainly we could invite parents and students to events. I think if we did something before a big East or West High basketball game or something like that, we're going to get some students. But other ways that we can reach youth who might be impacted by this issue.
Jonathan, if we want to survey the youth, that's part of what I do here at the center is,
Okay.
and I've got all types of surveys that we've utilized in the past that speaks to bullying and victimization and violence. So, I mean, there's, again, with anything, there's pros and cons of
Yeah.
surveying and reaching the folks. I think some quantitative data as well as some, qualitative, ideally, focus groups or finding forums to talk with youth. The combination would be, the ideal.
And I'm asking, would you have the ability in your survey to be able to ask big level questions that then we could pull from their focus groups based on student answers?
Say that again.
So let's say if we send out a survey to all West and East High students, do you have a survey that would give us, of course, that 10,000 foot view, but do you also have a survey that would be able for us to pull out, say, 24 kids from West and East that we think would be a good sort of community composite that we could do a focus group on? Or would we have to?
Yeah, I mean, we could do that in a couple of ways. One, just, the broad 10,000 foot survey type of thing. And then within that, we could also, indicate, students that are of interest, students that would be interested in having a conversation
Okay.
with this group, provide us their contact information and, follow up with them on that.
Okay.
And
Okay.
from that, we could, get the, the profile of, what grade they're in or their age and things like that.
Would you be willing to sort of put something together for
Sure.
us to look at next time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Because I do think the focus groups would be really helpful to help us get an idea of where kids are at, for sure.
Yeah.
Other thing,
The other thing I was thinking is, we could, in addition or in lieu of focus group, just be at particular event happening and asking on the spot type of questions, kind of polling type of things too. It's not as in depth, but doing focus groups before or after some community event, doing it, separate, doing a a quick, 30-second feedback as students are entering in, or, if there's a collective group of students there, finding a mechanism, gathering input briefly from them as well.
okay. So yeah, attending a school event and sort of entrance polling them as they come in.
Are you guys only working with high school students?
No, youth in general. So I certainly think we'd also want to look at the middle school level, certainly, and probably also, I mean, even honestly, upper elementary in some cases. So no, we are not solely focused on high school, because it's an issue that impacts little kids all the way up to older kids, for sure.
I do have 2 staff that work on our prevention team, and I know we're working with the young men really about sexual violence. So I don't know, I might just talk to my prevention team to see, because they do have some events and different things like that. They have been doing some things in the community.
Okay.
So it might just be, I'm going to talk to staff to really make sure, because it might not be me being part of these meetings, but I have other staff that as well that works with youth. So I know my team works with the elementary, and they do a lot of basketball stuff and,
Mhm.
you know, different events and stuff like that. So,
No, that would be incredibly helpful. And if that's your staff asking the questions, if it's us coming to some of these events, I think we can be very flexible depending
Okay.
on what helps the kids feel most comfortable
Okay.
in answering questions of these types, because we know sometimes having a new person that they don't know can be daunting as well.
Okay.
But yeah, we're very flexible and would love to work with your team for sure.
You know, if we're thinking about kind of cross spectrum of ages, or, you know, looking younger, working with some of the parents who are using Head Start, early Head Start, that's a form where we may be able to, you know, early risk factors. Children there often will have siblings that are older too. It's, you know, it's a group that are experiencing, you know, asset limited or poverty, and whatever criteria they need to meet to be part of early Head Start, they may, that may also be an avenue.
Okay. Would you have access to be able to also send surveys or questions to early Head Start?
We could develop something. That's not a population I work with specifically, but I do work with parents.
Okay.
We could, you know, look at that.
Okay.
Surveys with that.
Okay. No, I think that would be helpful, because yeah, 14-year-olds don't just wake up one day and decide to commit gun violence. We know that there is a long and thorny path to get there for sure. Absolutely. And like I said, this commission is not created to just do the surface level stuff, pat ourselves all on the back and then go home. We want to get to the deep and fundamental issues, and that means we need to get to the deep and fundamental issues, for sure. So Michelle and I have also been working with some folks in the community as well. We're going to have a meeting in a few weeks, so we will hopefully have some more to kind of report on that in general. But Michelle and I are working on that with folks that trust her, and now to a certain extent trust me. So we're going to also be reaching out to folks who are also involved in community outreach and youth outreach and those types of things as well. Anything else on reaching out to youth or the community?
I apologize. I had to step away for a second, so you might have mentioned this, but we do need to consider too language, particularly if we want to
Yes.
talk to parents and whatnot. So just something to think about.
Yes. That's absolutely true.
Thank you so much for bringing that up.
Yes, absolutely. For sure. So we'll have to ponder that. I know that of course the school district has interpreters and those types of things, so that might be something that we can ask for some support from them. I know, but I'm also open. We should all be open to other ways that we can make sure that this information is disseminated in the easiest way for folks to understand, because it doesn't do us any good if we miss whole segments of the population because we're communicating one way and they can't or don't communicate that way, for sure.
Tyson's been good in the past about sharing their interpreters as well for things like this. So, and they have, I think, just about every language known to man out there anymore. So they have a variety of interpreters.
I'm sorry, what organization did you say?
Tyson's.
Oh, Tyson's. Gotcha.
No, that's incredibly helpful, to make sure we don't miss something, for sure. Other things. Okay. We do also want to start looking at reaching out to the other big name organizations. I have had contact with a couple of supervisors who are interested, a couple of school board members who are curious, the Community Foundation. I know we want to talk about what mental health, and so I know Blackhawk Grundy County Mental Health is also stated. So we probably also want to start getting on their agendas as well, both to inform and also look at ways that we can collaborate, because I will guess that our final report, which we will put out later this year, will impact, of course, the city, but will also impact work that these other organizations do. So if anyone has particular connections to organizations that they could reach out and start getting us on agendas, that would be very helpful.
Well, I
There's,
talk to Tom Ekus at Blackhawk Grundy about 3 times a week, so.
Okay.
There's an organization, I think I brought them up to you, Jonathan, that's going to be starting called Brownstone, and they're going to be working with youth in crisis. I don't know much about them, but I have her phone number, and I'd be willing to reach out to her to find out more about when their launch date is. And I don't know would you want her to be invited to the commission or to just have a meeting with you, or?
I'd be perfectly willing to have a conversation and see if there's collaboration. If folks want to come and be a part of this every fourth Tuesday, I'm not opposed. We're doing real work, so I'm perfectly fine meeting and then talking and going from there.
And I can connect to the county board of supervisors as well as our board of health.
Okay.
And I'll connect with the community foundation, because I was actually thinking about the Waterloo Community Foundation might be a good conduit to bring together a lot of these people from these other organizations as well. So I'll reach out to them.
Okay. Perfect. Others that we're missing or that I didn't think about, that I'm guarantee that is not an exhaustive list by any stretch of the imagination.
One sector that comes to mind is when you reference Tyson, the corporation or the business community. Is there an entity that or individuals within those large community organizations or companies that would be appropriate to reach out to? Who, and more general, when we think about the business community, their investment in this, who might be key individuals in that sector?
I can reach out to Carrie Darrow with Grow Cedar Valley.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
And send her a message, and either have a sit down with them. I know they host a ton of events too, so I will reach out to Carrie and see what connections we can build from there.
I had a thought on, I've had more than one, I've had several men that I've taught in the Blackhawk County Jail visit with me about their concerns of their teenage kids. And I don't know if there's I don't know if we could do any kind of a survey where we communicate with the social workers on reaching out. to the men and the women in the jail?
I was thinking about a survey too, similar to what you were thinking, Michelle, through People's. That might be a great way to connect with people. My daughter is a behavioral health counselor there, and it's very hard for them to get a hold of people with phones, no phones, those kind of things. So that might be a conduit for us to connect with some people who otherwise might be difficult to connect with, that we want to hear from.
I teach at the jail tomorrow. I could bring it up to Jessica and see what her thoughts would be, if you want me to.
My philosophy is, it is better to ask and get a no than to predetermine a no and not ask. So, absolutely. Gwen, would you be willing to reach out to Peoples and
Definitely.
see if they're, okay. Perfect. Any other groups, organizations? I know Teresa and I are on Thursday going to report back to the Human Rights Commission, and so, and obviously Director Funches as well. So, but other groups that we can think of offhand. Okay. Well, if it comes to you in the middle of the night, which is when I have all of my best ideas, you feel free to email the group. The last one is Director Emmerich very graciously shared with us 3 documents, which were incredibly interesting and difficult reads, I guess is the best way to put them. But they had several strategies. And I know that it feels like we're just beginning, but we were charged with making recommendations by the end of this calendar year. So I want us to think about strategies and things that we will want to recommend to the city council. I have several thoughts. Obviously, we're not writing the final report right now. But were there things that stuck out to folks? Obviously, it's a whole array, so all of it is good. But I wanted to hear from folks as we start preliminarily laying the groundwork. Were there things that particularly stuck out to you that you would prioritize top for our community? Or if you had questions, I know Director Emmerich has background in this field, so she could answer those as well.
Can I just kind of make a couple of clarifications? So Michael Fleming, Dr. Fleming, and I think probably have, he probably knows more about the CDC technical package than I do. I'm just familiar with it because I used it in Lynn County in my role there. And the 2 strategies that we were working on were the street outreach strategy and the social connections, excuse me. And I think that from kind of what I know about this process is that depending on the information that's gathered from the community outreach will help inform the strategies to move forward with that are outlined in the technical package, because it's so broad of a spectrum of things that you can choose from. And really what the community needs to do is say, okay, these are the evidence-based practices that exist. What do we know about our community that would help inform which practices fit for our community? And so that's kind of the process of evidence-based decision-making, where you have, that research evidence, but you also have your experiential evidence and you have contextual evidence as well. So it might be a little bit too soon to dig into this, but I'm kind of new, and so I wasn't sure where y'all were at in the process. So I just kind of went there.
No, that's very helpful for us because I think obviously you and Dr. Fleming have more expertise, but I think that does help me as a policymaker understand. I think it helps the group understand that it's not necessarily a buffet that we are making decisions, but they're informed by the other information that we are collecting. Could you tell us a little bit about your Lynn County experience? How has that program been doing for that community?
Sure, I haven't, I mean, obviously I've been at Blackhawk for about a year now, so I'm a little bit detached, but the strategies that they were taking were informed actually from another resource I shared, the group violence intervention model that's out of the John Jay College of Criminal Justice. The county, Lynn County, the Cedar Rapids School District, and the city of Cedar Rapids all worked together to develop a set task force. They called it Safe, Equitable, and Thriving. They collected a lot of data about what was going on in the community, put it together into a report, and then used that report to identify where they needed to apply different interventions. And one of the things that they identified is a conference they were able to go to through this National Network for Safe Communities. And that model really targets how with group violence intervention, that there are typically a very small number of individuals creating the majority of the violence occurrences. And Joe, I see you shaking your head, so this is probably consistent. Like, you could probably name who they are, right? And so the focus of the street outreach was to have very targeted intervention with the individuals that were known as high risk, either as potential victims or potential perpetrators, or both, because a lot of times they're both. And so the street outreach efforts were really focused around that group violence intervention model, with having wraparound services offered and a strong moral voice. So usually like an elder or something in the community, partnered with like a social worker or a social service organization, and a law enforcement presence that said, we're here for you. We want you to be alive, safe, and out of prison. And we're here to help you. And we want you to change, and we're going to help you do that. If you don't change, there are going to be consequences. And so that was kind of how the Lynn County Cedar Rapids model was moving forward as of a year ago. They were having very good outcomes.
Good. Others. All right, so I think that helps us, and I think that helps us as we start to collect this data and looking forward about what might be on the table for everyone. So I think everyone has some things that some tasks ahead. I do want to meet at sort of our regular scheduled time on that fourth Tuesday. So that is the 20 what? 20, it's not the 20, the 24th. So I think we come back at the 24th and kind of report out where our progress has been on sort of each of the things that we have agreed to take on. I will send out a summary either tonight or tomorrow night of our conversation today, just so folks kind of, remember. If you have questions or anything like that, or want something added to the next agenda, please let me know. If you have questions or concerns, please let me know. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but is there anything else that folks feel that we need to talk about before we go?
Jonathan, the meeting on the 24th, is that at the same time? I don't see it on my calendar.
Yeah, I haven't sent out that'll be at our regular 4 o'clock time.
Okay. Actually,
Yep.
there I see it. Yep. Okay. I'm sorry, the regular what time?
4 o'clock.
So it will be, we met earlier this time.
We did based on folks' schedules.
Okay.
How often do you meet?
Once a month, on the fourth Tuesday via Zoom. That being said, as these community events and other things come up, I'm guessing that we will meet either in small groups or together more often moving forward. But we are regularly scheduled every fourth Tuesday from 4 until 5.
Okay.
Quick question for Joe before we get off. Joe, I know that there has been following up on what Caitlin referred to in terms of the gang intervention approach. I know in the Waterloo area, there's been a similar callback. Have you been involved with that, or is there other people that have been in charge of that, or is there any information that collectively over time comes from those meetings that could inform us in any way?
Yeah, we've done, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 call-ins. I was involved with the first couple, and then Matt McGee took it over, and then COVID came and it kind of went away for a little bit. We did not have very much success on the actual first one we tried, because it was basically an invite it was a lot of juveniles, and we sent it to parents saying, hey, your son is involved with this. We know he's involved with it. Bring him to this meeting. I think we sent 15 letters, and we had 2 people show up, and they're both parents, no kids. So it wasn't really successful. So then we went to a different route, kind of like I talked about, people that you could compel to come, people on probation, parole. We brought them in. Actually, many of you know Pastor Q. He facilitated that meeting, and it was outstanding. He did a great job. Deborah Harmon Hodges was kind of involved with it. They did a really good job of kind of, this is the rule. They didn't let anybody speak out. It was very well run. Honestly, it was amazing at how that went. And then the next one, they did juvenile. We had a hard time getting juvenile court information. The juvenile courts weren't real big on sharing a lot of that. And then TC over there got involved, and it got us into the juvenile court system a little bit. And we did one with them. It was us, supposed to be the police chief. He wasn't available. Matt McGee did it. The U.S. Attorney's Office normally does it. And then usually some sort of clerical person to speak. And honestly, if you can get Pastor Q, he's really got the method for that. I mean, he's done it. He knows it. He's been there. But it was, if you try to, send letters or invite people, you're there by yourselves. We've been doing it for a long time. We've tried so much stuff to get people, and it's so much better. Like I said, if you can go to where they're at, where they're going to be anyway, and just get in front of them and get your message out. It just seems to always work better for us, and that's what worked better for the call-ins with PSN. And I'm familiar with Cedar Rapids' program. I've been on a couple of their dial-in meetings. We do some stuff very similar. Our PSN program isn't quite as robust as theirs. Their advantage is the U.S. Attorney's Office sits in Cedar Rapids, sits in Lynn County. So there is a certain amount of regional bias, for lack of a better term, and that's probably not the right term, but because they're there, they get a little bit. We do have pretty good contact with them. Actually, I got to meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office next week. We do have a lot of contact with them, but PSN kind of ebbed and flowed for us, and it's starting to come back. COVID put a wrench in it. Just the meetings, they were prevented from traveling, and it just kind of slowed down, and it started back up, and we're starting to get our feet back under us with it.
Great, thank you.
So how did they let people know about that meeting?
PSN was when it started, it was really amazing, because it started out with 4 or 5 groups, and it got to the point where we moved it to the UniQ because we needed bigger space, and there were a lot of people there, and it was really a wide variety and diverse There was a lady that was there all the time whose son was in federal prison, and she actually spoke at one of the things about what that did to her, to these offenders, what it's like being the mother of someone. And she did not make any excuses for her son. She simply spoke to the fact that as a mother to have to go to Indiana to see her son and how that hurt. And it was really eye-opening, I think, to me especially, but to a lot of the offenders. I think they were like, wow, I didn't think about that. So, but that was really big. And then it kind of dwindled out, and people, a lot of people showed up, and then, there was 14, 16, 18 people, and then there was 10, and then there was 8, and then it was us and the attorneys. And it's just it kind of faded out, that aspect of it. But I do see an appetite for that, for at least from my perspective. I've had a lot of requests for me to come places and talk to people and to get people to get out, and so I've been really busy with meeting with people and having those conversations. So I just, we all have a ton of meetings, and to add one to everybody's plate, and at least I've worked with you for years and you run a great program. But you're busy, we're busy, they're busy. It's just everybody, it's like, oh, I got something else, I got a conflict. And then people do take vacations, and it's really tough to get a sustainable, lift on things when you're pulling people from all these other groups.
I think that's something, and I know that's something we've experienced too. We were doing community conversations with a lot of marginalized populations, and we had the same trajectory. It starts out great. And I think it behooves us to really think about that. And so many times people want to go in with their first meeting as sort of, this is our preliminary meeting, this is our beginning, whatever. Sometimes you just got to go in with a punch, and you just got to be like, we're not going to try to create a sustainable model. We're going to have a 3-meeting series, or we're going to have where it is just that. And then if there's an energy, you can always change, but that way people don't feel like it's something, you just got to go into those meetings really prepared to have it be impact immediately, because, it's just the nature, like you said, Joe, the nature of people's schedules. But I think it's something to really think about as we think about doing these meetings.
Well, and there's value in what you say, the 3 meetings. There's value in that. I mean, I've been off PSN for years, but when I got this job, I reached out to people that I had connected with on there and said, hey, I want to meet with you and talk about something you brought up. I mean, there's value in that. I find tremendous value in the either one-on-one or a smaller group meeting. For my personal, these large addresses, I don't feel a personal connection. I don't feel like I get to know the people in the room. It's better, honestly, quite honestly, it's best. One of the best interactions I had was at Abraham's church when they served a lunch, and I sat and ate with a young man who had been in prison, and we just talked, and it was amazing how his kids were my kids' age, doing the same stuff. And he's like, I didn't bet this never happened, but it was amazing. And that to me is where our value comes for us, for our outreach. Now this group's a little different in what they want to accomplish, but for our outreach, the smaller groups, the more intimate settings are much more valuable. When we get a large crowd, inevitably somebody takes it over, and the meeting goes, it's supposed to go this direction, and we end up, way off in the weeds somewhere, and you can't get it back. It's very difficult to steer that ship. So I prefer the small settings. I love one-on-ones. I've had countless people in here talking to me, and I've went and talked to countless people. So I do prefer that. Phone calls, text messages. That's kind of, I don't know. I feel more value personally for that.
And I think that's fair. I think that's valid, especially for our work here in dealing with populations where folks don't feel valued, and just feel like little pieces in a system that doesn't care about them. So I think that's a really important thought to take as we move forward and begin planning. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time. I will send out notes, and I will see you all together in about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you all
Thanks.
for your time
Bye.
and effort.